Hey everybody, it's Courtney and I'm back with day number 4 of the Simon Says Stamp Card Kit for October 2018. Today I'm going to be using the 3 card panels here by Gina K Designs. These are foil cards and it would not be a Courtney card if I didn't pick up a marker or a pencil or a paintbrush. So I'm going to start off by coloring these images before adding my foil. I'm going right in with my darkest color here. I don't want to overblend because this is not a paper that necessarily can take too much ink. So I'm starting with my darkest color, blending that out with my mid-tone, and then I'll go back in with my lightest color. I'm just concentrating my darkest areas for this one being towards the base of each of the petals. I'm only doing 3 color blends on most of these images because, like I said, I just don't want to add all that much ink and risk having it bleed through. I colored the second flower the same exact way, and then we'll move on to the leaves. For these, I'm starting again with my darkest color and just adding a few little flicks there to the base of each of the leaves. Then I'll go in with my mid-tone color, which is the G03, and blend that out almost to the tips of the leaves. And then finally go back in with my lightest color just for the very tips. Now you're not going to get all that much contrast. Most of this is going to be covered up by the foil. Any of these black lines will be covered by foil. So don't necessarily use those as your shadows. Next, we'll move on to the next card here, or the next card panel. And these have 3 different leaves on them. And I'm going to be coloring them all in fall colors, but just a little bit different. We'll start off with this top leaf. And I'm going to be using some YR markers and a Y marker. And again, starting off with my darkest color, being careful not to overblend. And I am just concentrating my darkest areas being in the, I guess it would be the veins of the leaf. I think that's what you call them. And I'm just adding a few little flicks to the center of each of the little sections of this leaf with my darkest color. Then I will go in with my mid-tone color, which is the YR24, and just extend those flicks out a little bit. This is kind of like a muted orange or like a golden orangish yellow. I do like this color combination. The YR and the Y marker, which will be the Y23, actually blend really well together. Next, I'll go in with that Y23 and just blend all of those colors out, just being careful not to go outside of the lines. I did a little bit in the second, I think the second or third leaf, and I was able to take my colorless blender. I wasn't sure about using that on this paper, but I didn't really have a problem. Next, we'll move on to the bottom leaf, and I'm going to be coloring this orange as well, only this will be a more darker or more vibrant orange. And I'm just basically tracing the lines within the image. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to put my shading, so I figured I'd start in the center and then work out with those little veins there in the leaf. Next, I'll take my mid-tone color. This is the YR18, and I'm just thickening up these lines. I'm not doing any flicking at all with this. I'm just making these lines a little bit thicker. And then I'll go in with my lightest color, which is the YR68, and I'll cover up the entire leaf. And this is the one that I did go out of the lines a little bit. And I did not have a problem, even though these are pretty dark colors and I wouldn't necessarily normally use my colorless blender. I did not have a problem, and actually worked better on this paper than it does on, you know, like Nina for such a vibrant color. I didn't want to risk using a gel pen because I wasn't sure how the foil would react to that, whether it would stick to places maybe I didn't want it to stick to. Next, for this middle leaf, I'm going to be coloring this kind of a deeper red color. And again, I will start off with my my darkest color, and my darkest area will be right there in the center of the leaf, and I'll do some flicks out from there. Then I'll go in with my mid-tone and blend that out, and then finally my lightest color. I was having a hard time blending my light color and my mid-tone color, so I did go back in with the R46 and just blended that out a little bit further, and then I was able to get a better blend. Next, for this third and final panel, there's really not much to color here, so I am just going in with one single color, and I'm covering up the entire center of these little flowers. I'm not doing any kind of blending at all. This is the YR28, which is a gold color, I guess, and like I said, just filling that area in. Next, we'll move on to adding the foil to these cards, and I'm just using my laminator here. You can definitely use like a Mink machine. I'm placing my foil on top of my card panel there with the foil or shiny side up, and I'm just putting this between a piece of copy paper folded in half, and you can see that my first run through here didn't cover up some of the areas. This is not the places that I colored, so it had nothing to do with maybe the Copic ink laying on top of that toner, those toner lines. So I just put this back into my laminator and ran it through again, and seemed to get much better coverage that time. Next, we'll move on to the next card panel here, and again, I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm just laying down my foil with the shiny side up, placing that in between the copy paper there and running that through. And this one I didn't have to run through twice. This one seemed to get good coverage the first time. And last, we'll move on to this final panel, and I ran this through my laminator a little bit different. I cut down my foil to be about the same size as my card panel, and I skipped the copy paper. So I just laid down that foil right on top of my card panel, shiny side up, and just ran it through my laminator just like that. I did run this through twice. It probably was not a necessity to do this, but I just wanted to make sure that I had good coverage and that it was adhering to the places it was supposed to adhere to. And it turned out great. This one was my favorite one by far. So once all my foiling was done, I went ahead and assembled my cards, and I did a little bit of a different layout, but pretty much kept these clean and simple. You don't really need to add anything to these. These are pretty perfect the way they are. For this first panel here with the 3 large flowers, I am just taking a little bit off of each side and the top and the bottom so that my image is still centered. For the panel with the leaves on it, I am just cutting a little bit on either side and leaving the top and bottom still to be 5.5 inches long. For the one with the flowers, my favorite one, I left it as is. I'm not doing anything to that but adhering that to an A2 size card base. So moving back to the card with the 3 flowers there, I used my Tombow Mono Multi Glue to adhere this to a black card panel that is cut just slightly larger than this panel, and then I'll adhere that right onto a white A2 size note card, again using my Tombow Mono Multi Glue. There was a little bit of a smudge right there on top near between those 2 little flowers. I don't know how it got there. I wasn't using any ink. But in order to cover that up, this is kind of like a shiny cardstock, so I didn't want to use my sand eraser like I normally would. So I just took some Nuvo drops and I took out my gold to match the inside of those flowers, and I just added a few drops to the top and the bottom just to kind of cover up some of those smudges. For the card panel with the 2 little flowers there, the one that we colored first, like I said, I loved this just the way it was. So I didn't trim it. I didn't add any embellishments. I just stuck this down to an A2 size note card and called that one done. For this last and final one, I took a piece of that tonic gold cardstock that we used 2 or 3 cards ago, And I am just sticking this down to the left side of my card panel with the same Tombow Mono multi glue. And then I'll take the main card panel there and just line that up to the right, just to have a little bit of that strip showing. I also ended up adding a few Nuvo drops in that same gold color to this card as well. That is it for these 3 cards today. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.